Hey there, bookworms. Welcome to Pouring Over Books, a podcast where we dive into the books we love and maybe a few we didn't. I'm your host, LaShawn, and every week I'll be deep diving into what I'm reading, recommendations, and talking about all the things that we love about books. So grab your favorite coffee or tea, find a cozy spot, and let's get ready to pour over some great books together. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Pouring Over Books podcast. I am LaShawn, your host, and I hope you are doing well. Friends, it is really summer now. Something about the 4th of July always signals to me that we are in the heart of the summertime. The weather here in the South is firmly in swampland, and we are all just trying to stay cool and not sweat through our clothes the minute that we step outside. I had a lovely weekend, and I did manage to get through a book that I will talk about later. I know a lot of people are doing the best books they have read so far this year since it is the mid-year point. But friends, I don't wanna, especially since my best books of this year have mainly, I think the majority of them have been read in the last 2 months. So you've heard about them recently and you know what they are. I think I'd rather wait. I'm going to be the outlier here, and I'm going to wait until the end of the year and give you my wrap up traditionally, like we used to do before there was a rush to crown a book in the middle of the year. So, anyway, that's just my own little thing. Anyway, today's episode is inspired by my mother cleaning out her shed and finding so many of my older books. She found a huge box of V.C. Andrews books, friends, and we laughed hysterically at how all those books seem to include some type of incestuous relationship. And why was that even a thing? And why was I reading it at such a young age? My mother was never the type to police what I read. It was more of, oh, she's reading. And that was all that mattered. It was a book, I was reading it. Who cared what kind of book it really was? Sometimes it wasn't until after I read the book that she found out what it was about. And even then, she didn't just try to stop me or police me reading a book. It was like, my daddy used to say you can't unscramble eggs. You just keep going. Anyway, I got home from her house, and even though I was getting ready to start book 4 of the Goldfinch series, yes, I'm still reading that. I'm still going strong. And I will say that the third book did prove to be much better. Even though I really think they could have combined the first 3 books into one book. But anyway, I saw online someone mention Nora Roberts, and I went down a complete rabbit hole of the vastness of her backlist and the sheer variety in it. And I realized that Nora Roberts walked so the rest of these romance authors could run. I also really feel like Nora Roberts should be required reading for anyone who says they are into romance novels, because sometimes what passes for romance these days is really sex with a small plot. Not that there's anything at all wrong with that, because sometimes that's just what you need. But I came into the romance world, and as I'm telling my age, reading Nora Roberts, wrote romance books with a clear side plot. Yes, the romance was always the star because it's a romance novel, but there was also a secondary plot that was just important. I think I read a recent interview with her, and I'm going to have to link that, where she admits that now she writes more women's fiction than romance. That is an evolution of her writing over time, but you could see her leaning that way even since like when I got into her. It has always been like that. I think that romance should always be the star, but like I said, there should always be a secondary plot that should be just as important. I think that's why I love authors like Emily Henry and Carly Fortune, and Ali Jimenez and Debney Perry and Kathleen Cowles, because the romance is there for sure, but the side plot in the story is equally as important to move it along. Also, I think Nora Roberts is the reason why trilogies and series are my ideal romance format, not standalones in a series, but a proper trilogy. Like you need to read books 1, 2 before you read book 3 type. That's the type of trilogy I'm talking about. Plus, she has such a variety. You want magical realism? Nora's got you. You want fantasy? Nora's got you. You want women's fiction? Nora's got you. You want gritty crime fiction with a slice of romance? Nora's got you. So, today, with all of that in mind, my goal is to formally introduce you to Nora Roberts and her backlist, which means that they can be found at the library or even the Goodwill or thrift store. There is always going to be a Nora Roberts book there. I'm going to give Recs for every type of romance reader because, yes, her catalog, like I keep saying, is vast and there's literally something for everyone. Let's start with my personal top 3 books of hers in order of publication, I guess you could say. We'll start with River's End, published in 1999. The premise: Olivia's mother was murdered when she was a child, and the killer may have been her father. Sheltered from the truth, Olivia only remembers fragments until nightmares push her to uncover what really happened. With the help of Noah Brady, son of the detective who found her hidden years ago, she begins piecing together that terrifying night. As they delve into the dark Hollywood mystery, their bond deepens. But unlocking the past comes with danger. The monster from her childhood may not be gone at all. Hands down, one of my favorite books of all time. I, in fact, am looking at my copy of this book. It is old. It is like, oh, look, the tag is still on it. I think I got this from, what's the name of that bookstore? Not Barnes and Noble. It was another one, another big box store. But I remember this type of tag from that store. But yes, look at this. Oh my God, this is so old. It was $4.99, it looks like. Oh my God. Anywho, yes, one of my favorites. It was a good book. The next one that I want to bring to you, one of my second of my top 3, is Carolina Moon, published in 2001. Mary Bodine grew up in a rundown house where her father ruled with an iron fist and a leather belt, and where her dreams and talents had no room to flourish. Her one escape was her neighbor Hope, who lived in a big house just a short skip away, and whose friendship allowed Tori to be something she wasn't allowed to be at home, a child. Then Hope was brutally murdered and everything fell apart. Now, as she returns to progress with plans to settle in and open a stylish home design shop, Tori is determined to find a measure of peace and free herself from the haunting visions of the past. As she forges a new bond with Cade LaBelle, Hope's older daughter and the heir of the family fortune, she isn't sure whether the tragic loss they share will unite them or drive them apart. But she is willing to open her heart just a little to try. But living so close to those unhappy memories will be more difficult and frightening than Tori could have ever expected, because Hope's murderer is nearby as well. This was so good. I categorize this one as romantic drama. It's atmospheric, it's southern, it's thick. Like you can feel the heat and the stickiness and the slow burn draws of it all. It is just so good. And it is a slow burn because, yeah, Cade, he has to work real hard. But it was a murder mystery on top of the romance, and it just all came together so beautifully. And like I said, with that one, I have that one next to me right now. And I have all of these, I pulled all of these out, and I am going to add them to my TBR because I'm like, I got to reread some of these. The last book my third book that is my favorite of hers is Northern Lights, published in 2004. Was it 2004? I have this in hardback. So it might have been because that's when they started making hardbacks. Anyway, as a Baltimore cop, Nate Burke watched his partner die on the street, and the guilt still haunts him. With nowhere else to go, he accepts a job as chief of police in a tiny, remote Alaskan town with the hopes of starting over. Despite the name, lunacy provides a balm for Nate's shattered soul, and an unexpected affair with pilot Meg Galloway warms his night. But other things in lunacy are heating up. Nate suspects the killer in an unsolved murder still walks the snowy streets. His investigation will unearth the secrets and suspicions that lurk beneath the placid surface, as well as bring out the big city survival instincts that made him a cop in the first place. And his discovery will threaten the new life and the new love that he has finally found for himself. I love this one for the mental health rep and the Alaska setting and the murder mystery that pulls it all together. I love the character Nate, and I think this may be one of my favorite of hers because the main male character here is what drives the book. which is rare in a romance novel, but it is just so good. Because Meg, the love interest, even though she has her own little storyline, Nate is the main character of this book. And it's just so good. I just love, like, if you can see by all three of these, I love some romance with my suspense and murder solving. So that's that. Now that I've told you about my favorite three books, I'm going to tell you I've got three categories, maybe. Let me see. One, two, three, four. I've got five categories that I'm going to talk about, and my recommendation for each category. The first category is her best romance series. Like I said before, Nora Roberts is the blueprint when it comes to romantic series. And when I'm asked where to start on her trilogies, I always direct people to start at The Gallaghers of Ardmore. There are other trilogies, and there's even a couple of quartets that I will say read too, but this one is the classic one that I always say start at. Ada, Sean, and Darcy run a family pub in a pretty seaside village where the magic of Ireland weaves a spell of passion and discovery. Each sibling gets their own book, and it's just the perfect blueprint to all of the trilogies that you see today. This was before every book had a specific trope. Before tropes became like this big thing, it was just good romance. If I look back at it, I can pick out the quote unquote tropes, but they're not as obvious and like overwhelming like they are now. It was just good romance. And I love each and every one of these books. But the second, Tears of the Moon, which features the second brother, Sean, is my favorite. The best crime book from Nora Roberts is going to be the In Death series. In Death series. There are 60 of these books, and the 61st is due to be published in September, and the 62nd comes out in February. She is prolific. I love this series, but I confess that I haven't read one since about book 17. At least that's the last one I own. The books are futuristic thrillers set in the year 2058 when technology completely rules the world. It follows Detective Eve Dallas, and the series starts when Eve is a lieutenant with over 10 years of experience on the force, and she gets involved with Rourke, an Irish billionaire who happens to be the suspect in her murder investigation. The series is brilliant, it's fast, it's full of murder, money, sex, romance. As far as Eve allows, you have to get to know her to understand that. And there is a brilliant cast of side characters that are imperative to the story and that you also see grow throughout this series. And I love it. And this is my own reminder to myself to get back into this series. The next category that I have is best fantasy series, because like I said, Nora Roberts is versatile. In this category, I'm going to recommend the Circle trilogy. This is pure fantasy, or what we might now call romantasy. Yeah, I think it qualifies. Because you've got witches, warlocks, vampires, and shapeshifters in a battle for humanity and the world. Yes, they are the chosen. It's not a chosen one, it's like chosen few. The trilogy starts with Hoyt Mac Sionolith, I think. I cannot pronounce Irish names. I'm so sorry. On a cliff, railing against the evil that has torn his twin brother from his family's embrace. Her name is Lilith. Existing for over thousands of years, she has lured countless men to an immortal doom with her soul-stealing kiss. But now, this woman, known as a vampire, will stop at nothing until she rules the world and those beyond it. Hoyt is no match for the Dark Siren, but his powers come from the goddess Morrigan, and it is through her, Morgaine, and it is through her that he will get his chance at vengeance. At Morgaine's charge, he must gather 5 others to form a ring of power strong enough to overcome Lilith. A circle of 6, himself, the witch, the warrior, the scholar, and the one of many forms, and the one he's lost. And it is this circle, hundreds of years in the future, where Hoyt will learn how strong his spirit and his heart have become. So, yes, we get time travel, other worlds, magic, mystery, love, romance, sexy times. It's everything you want in a series, in a romantasy series. It is everything. It really is. The last book in this series will always, always be my favorite, not only because it is the conclusion and it is a satisfying conclusion, but because this was the love story I was waiting for, and it did not disappoint. I may have shed a small tear at the end of it. Yes, I'm smiling thinking about this because over the years, I haven't read the whole series all the way through in a long time. But that last book I've read several times. In fact, I've read it this year. I've read it this year. I didn't put it on my good because I was like, can I count it if I'm rereading it like for the 50th time? But anyway, the next category is mystery thriller with romance as really the subplot. And I'm going to put Angels Fall as my book in this category. The sole survivor of a brutal crime back east, Reese Gilmore settles in Angels Fall, Wyoming, temporarily at least, and takes a job at a local diner. One day, while hiking in the mountains, she peers through her binoculars and sees a couple arguing on the bank of the churning Snake River. And suddenly, the man is on top of the woman, his hands around her throat. By the time Reese reaches the gruff loner named Brody further down the trail, the pair is gone. And when authorities comb the area where she saw the attack, they find no trace that anyone was even there. No one in Angels Fall seems to believe Reese except Brody, despite his seeming impatience and desire to keep her at arm's length. When a series of menacing events makes it clear that someone wants her out the way, Reese must put her trust in Brody and herself to find out if there is a killer in Angels Fall before it is too late. This one is so good. So good. So good. Once again, good mental health rep, strong male character. Our female lead finds her strength again, and the side cast of characters is awesome. And I just realized like there's always some type of murder involved in all of her books. In all of the women's fiction type, there's always some type of mystery murder. Interesting. All right. The last category that I want to talk about is romantic suspense. And yes, that is different from the previous category. This book that I want to add to this category is The Witness. And yes, all of these have some type of murder and mayhem in them. What does that say about me? But anyway, the daughter of a cold, controlling mother and an anonymous donor, studious, obedient Elizabeth Finch finally lets loose one night, drinking too much at a nightclub and allowing a strange man's seductive Russian accent to lure her to a house on Lakeshore Drive. 12 years later, the woman now known as Abigail Lowry lives alone on the outskirts of a small town in the Ozarks. A freelance security systems designer, her own protection is supplemented by a fierce dog and an assortment of firearms. She keeps to herself, saying little, revealing nothing. Unfortunately, that seems to be the quickest way to get attention in a tiny southern town. The mystery of Abigail Lowry and her sharp mind, secretive nature, and unromantic viewpoint intrigues local police chief Brooks Gleason on both a personal and professional level. And while he suspects that Abigail needs protection from something, Gleason is accustomed to two-bit troublemakers, not the powerful and dangerous men who are about to have him in their sights. And Abigail Lowry, who has built a life based on security and self-control, is at risk of losing both. This book actually battled it out for a place in my top 3. In fact, it may tie for number 3. It is one of my favorites of hers. And in fact, I'm gonna have to add this one too to my TBR because it's time for a reread. So that, my friends, is my primer and my argument for you to get started reading the great Nora Roberts. I don't think I included if you noticed, if you listen to the descriptions, most of them have a mystery thriller type bent to them, at least most of my favorites. There are books of hers that are more romance based, but they're more of her earlier books, you might say. And even There are a couple of her series, like maybe the Born In series, that are of a more romantic bent, and even like the Gallagher series. It's not like there's no mystery to solve. Well, there kind of is, but there's no murder and mayhem. The Born In series, which is about three sisters, there's no murder mystery there. There's just, love, and each character has to find herself. Even the Inner Harbor series, not is it the Inner Harbor? The Chesapeake Bay series. Yes, that one too is actually very good. There is more romance than anything else. So if that is something that you really want, she does have options for that. I just happen to lean towards a more well-rounded book sometimes. But if I do want romance, I do fall back. I will say her romance trilogies usually have more romance than her standalones. So if that is what you're looking for, that is what I'm going to recommend. Okay, friends. So now let's get into my current reads. I just finished reading What Kind of Paradise by Janelle Brown. Let me remind you what that's about. Raised in an isolated Montana cabin in the 1990s, Jane knows only the world her father has created, off the grid, full of books and secrets. Told that her mother died in a car crash, Jane begins to question their past as she grows older. When she discovers she's been complicit in a terrible crime, she flees to San Francisco in search of the truth. There, in a city on the cusp of the digital age, Jane unravels the mystery of her mother's death and confronts the unsettling reality of her upbringing, forcing her to define identity, loyalty, and what it means to be free. I'm going to be honest and say that this book lost me at about 75%. The pacing was slow, but it's a literary novel, so I I was like, okay. But sometimes there was too much information and sometimes there was not enough. I mean, you knew going in that something wasn't quite right, but when you find out exactly what it is and Jane flees, I feel like the story just died when it should have been reaching the crescendo, you might want to say. I wanted more, but honestly, I don't know what more she could have done with this story. I know I sound vague, but I really don't want to give you my issues with how the story went after she got to San Francisco because I would have to spoil the book for you, and I tried to give spoiler-free reviews here. Let's just say that after she got to San Francisco, I felt like the story stalled, even though that's, in my opinion, where it really should have picked up more. I felt like a couple of things that happened when she got to San Francisco just didn't move the book along like I think it could have. So this, I'm sorry to say, got a 3.5 out of 5 for me. I am currently reading Curvy Girl Summer by Danielle Allen, and baby, let me tell you what it's about. After a one-night stand with her clingy ex, Aaliyah James has an epiphany. This ain't it. She knows what she wants and she's ready to move past casual hookups, flings, and situationships. Before her family, the clock is ticking. After all, she's almost 30. And when they imply that her personality and her body might be too big to land a man, she lets them know that they've gone too far. And her non existent man loves her curves. Thank you very much. Now she has 7 weeks to find the perfect boyfriend to rub in their faces at the big fancy birthday celebration she's been planning. After her first blind date goes wrong, charming local bartender Ahmad Williamson consoles her with a drink and some playful banter. Aaliyah takes him up on his suggestion to use a dating app, but the more she sees of his warm and funny and easygoing nature, the less she wants to check her DMs. Will her next swipe bring her closer to true love, or is her match closer than she thinks? You know the answer. Anyway, the first couple of paragraphs, like the very first page, had me clutching my pearls. And then I kept reading because I could not stop. It's good. I will let you know how that goes soon. I am currently listening to If You Stayed by Brittany Cherry. The premise: he was the love of her life until an accident erased every memory of her. Thanks to a devastating accident, Gabrielle Sinclair forgot everything he ever knew about his first love. In fact, he forgot everything about the first 20 years of his life. He's now back, hired as an architect to design the home Kiara will share with her controlling husband. He doesn't remember their past, doesn't remember the kisses, the promises, the heartbreak, but something in him still feels her. Kiara made peace with losing him once. She thought she buried that chapter for her daughter's sake. But his return threatens to unravel the fragile life she's built and awaken a love she never truly let go of. When love is forgotten and safety becomes a prison, what would one risk to find their way back to the one thing that has never felt real. I am listening to this, and while I love the story, I'm going to say that I hate the male narrator's voice. I almost want to stop and just get the ebook or the book, but my library does not currently have a copy. So I'll suffer for now because I really need to know how this ends, how this works out. It's a love story. It's supposed to work out somehow. So I'm like, I don't see it right now. So I'm trying to figure out how it works. I am also reading Rose in Chains by Julie Soto. It comes out today. Um, let's talk about the premise. The war is over, dark forces have won, and the hero who was supposed to save them is dead. Captured as her castle is overrun by the enemy, the world as Brownie Rosewood knows it changed forever. Evil has won, and her people face imminent servitude, imprisonment, and death. Stripped of her magic and her freedom, Brownie and the other survivors are quickly sold off to the highest bidders in an auction. And as Evermore's princess, she fetches the highest price. After a fierce bidding war, she is sold to none other than Tovin Hurst, scion of the family known for their cruelty. Yet, despite the horrors of her new world and the role she must learn to play in it, all is not lost. Help and hope may yet arise from the most unlikely of places. This book was originally Dramione Fan Fiction called The Auction on a website called AO3, which is a fan fiction website, but it was reworked and traditionally published. For those that don't know, fan fiction is where a fan writes fiction based on characters from popular series. It's amazing what people will take, but you can't traditionally publish it because the characters belong to the authors legally. But fan fiction is fine as long as it is not published in some type of way. But anyway, this is fan fiction based on Harry Potter and those characters. So in this book, this is Draco and Hermione. So in Dramione fiction, I'm sorry, is Draco and Hermione. So in this book, Bryony is Hermione and Tovin is Draco, which I never would have thought of, but people are evidently obsessed. I would have put Hermione with Harry, but anyway, moving on. In fact, there are also two other fan fictions turn traditionally published books based on Dramione fan fiction coming out this year. The most anticipated being Alchemist by Cinlin Yu, which is based on the very, very, very popular fan fiction Manacled. I debated reading Manacled before she took it down, but I decided to wait because I don't want to. No, I don't want to have. Plus, the Manacled is very long. It's still out there. I could still get to it if I wanted to, but Manacled is very, 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 very long. I don't have time for that. I'll just wait and read the traditionally published book that comes out in September, October, I think, something like that, sometime in the fall, which is kind of perfect because, Harry Potterish. All that to say, it took me a good minute to get into this book, but now it's a bit more interesting than it was. I would have DNF with Abandoned, like I've been doing, like I talked about last episode, but I've got to review this one. So I received it as an ARC, so I soldier on, and I will give you an update soon. Okay, friends, that's all I've got for you today. If you loved this episode, do me a favor and make sure you follow the podcast so that you don't miss the next one. It's free. It helps the show. It helps us find more bookish friends, and it keeps your TBR interesting. As always, you can follow me personally on IG and TikTok at LaShawn Wilts and on my Substack at Letters to LaShawn. Okay, friends, thank you for listening. I will talk to you next week. I hope you read a good book in the meantime. Bye-bye.